Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new around here, hello, welcome, my name is Charlotte. Today, as by the title, we are going to be doing my July wrap up, and I just want to preface this saying that July was a bit of a mess of a month in terms of reading. I had a very weird, crazy, up and down month in general in terms of life. You know, I started the month kind of same old and just not really knowing where my life was going and kind of getting quite down about it. And then I got myself a job, and I've obviously talked about this a lot on my channel. It's not, as I've said before, a dream job, but it's a job. It's got me money. I'm working. So that also, even though that kind of took the stress off of me for a bit, it's also taken me through the runs of trying to get used to that and trying to adapt my previous lifestyle and previous what I do in my life to what I now have and wrap it around my job. So in terms of reading and YouTubing, it kind of went a bit crazy. So my reading has been very up and down. You know, I've DNF'd some, I've put some down, I've changed my TBR, it's been a bit of a mess, and it hasn't been the greatest reading month in terms of like start ratings and stuff like that. I'm still going to do this wrap up. I'm going to try and make it short and sweet because I'm not really in the mood, so I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible and not make it so long and rambly like most of my wrap ups are. So that might just mean I won't talk in too much depth about my books, but oh well, some of these books I just honestly either have completely forgotten or just don't really care about too much to talk about. So I don't really want to be talking about books that I don't really care about too much. I'm just going to run through some stats before we dive right into the proper wrap up. My total page count for this month was 1,521 pages, which is a bit low. It's not my best. It's a bit shocking compared to June, which I think June was over 2,000. Yeah, June was just over 2,000. My daily average was 49 pages a day. Again, some days I didn't read at all. Some days I read barely anything. You know, some days was normal, but again, 49, basically 50 pages, not the best. I gave 2 books 3 stars, 1 book 4 star, and 1 book 5 stars, so it's kind of a alright, but to me it just felt a bit I properly DNF'd 1 book but then put down another book. My author gender ratio is 2 male authors and 5 female authors, which is pretty typical for me. I do read more female authors. Format ratio is I read 6 books by physical and 3 by audiobook. 1 of them I did on both. So I think without further ado, as I usually do, I do it all chronologically. I do it from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. I'm going to talk about the books I read this month, or in July. So the first book that I planned on reading in the beginning of July, I ended up DNFing. It is a second book in a series that even the first one I didn't really love. I liked it, it was okay, and I think I should have realised that I didn't really care that much about the series from the first book, and that is Unravel Me by Tahara Mafi. I just don't really care about this series anymore. If you don't know, this is the second book in the Shatter Me series, and it's quite a typical YA, very popular YA book series, and I just don't care. I think I wasn't really into the first book. I found the first book quite cliche and quite typical, and just I wasn't really vibing with it, but I still did okay like it, so I thought I'd pick up the second one, I'd pick up this one, and I just couldn't. I just don't think I had the energy or wanted to put the energy into this series or into this book, and I just didn't see the point in continuing on with this series and with this book when I just don't care. If I don't care about the characters and I don't care about what's going to happen for the rest of the series, and it's become a longer series than it was previously, I just don't see the point in me continuing with it. So that is why I DNF'd it. Sorry for all you Shatter Me stands out there, but it's just not for me. So the next book that I picked up this month was one that I wasn't actually planning on reading this month, but because of my kind of DNFing of Unravel Me, I had to kind of rearrange my TBR a little bit. But the next book I read was My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. This is just a typical adult thriller book that I have been meaning to read more of. I just had to stop filming for a bit because I completely just forgot and realised that I had my fan on because it's quite hot at the moment. I had my fan on while I was filming. If you've been hearing sounds and my audio is messed up, like I won't be able to tell until I've, you know, I've transferred this footage, but if I have and I've messed this up, I apologise. Back to this. When I just started reading this, I just remembered how much I love the writing style of adult thrillers. If you don't know what this book is about, I don't know if I want to go into too much depth about it, but this is about a married couple and they have a secret. They do stuff that maybe a married couple don't really normally do. Basically, this married couple kill people, and that's all I'm gonna say. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Yes, a 4 out of 5 stars, and I did enjoy it. It was good. The writing style, once again, is very addictive, and that's the sort of writing style I love. Adult thriller writing style, just love it. I'm trying to remember my thoughts on it, and I did talk to Michaela about it after I read it because she wanted me to. I'll leave her Michaela linked in the description below. She's great. I can barely remember my thoughts on this book, but what I do remember is, as I said, I did enjoy it. I think sometimes the plot twists and where it was going, I was a bit like, this is very stereotypical, this is very cliche to this genre, but stuff like that I do like. One thing I do remember talking to Michaela about was I think the ending just felt really wrapped up really quickly and just went by too quickly. It all happened, the big stuff happened, the big plot reveal and everything, you know, trying to tie it up happened, but then the ending just seemed too easy and too quick and too wrapped up when it shouldn't have been, because of what happens throughout the book and what happens at the end of the book. And I think it's hard to talk about books like this when, you know, there is a mystery, thriller, plot twist element to it. It's hard to talk about it without spoiling it. But I just did feel that it was wrapped up too quickly and too like, oh, sunshine and rainbows in some sense. Some adult thrillers can be very far-fetched, like they're gonna be. But I did enjoy it. It was a good book, and it just made me go like, I need to read more. I need to remember to pick up and read more adult thrillers because I love them and I love the writing style. And this one, at least it did better for me than Gone Girl, because if you know my opinions on Gone Girl, that book angered me so much. The next book I read was the first part of July's This versus That vlog series edition. If you know the series, you know. If you don't, it's linked in the description below. This edition was me reading 2 books given to me or gifted to me by people, and I got these books, both these books, kind of the end of last year, and just haven't got around to them yet, and I thought this is a great chance too. And the first one was Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I was gifted this by Brophy, so thank you, Brophy. I gave this inevitably, I think, a 3 out of 5 stars. It was good. I didn't enjoy it. At first I definitely did, and I was really interested to dive into the kind of Chinese inspired mythology because I'd never really read a Chinese inspired mythology book before. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about our main character Hesina, and her dad has died. Her father, like the king, has died, and it's been put down to just normal circumstances, but she believes he was murdered, so she's taken it upon herself to kind of investigate, was he murdered, and if he was, how, who, all that jazz. And as I said, it is inspired by Chinese mythology, which was really interesting. But the main issues I think I had with this book was because it's a standalone fantasy. I don't think it had enough time within this book to delve into and explain and to really get you immersed in this world and for you to understand this world. I did find myself quite confused at some points, and that could just be me, but I just felt like it needed more, or it needed to be bigger, or it needed to be a series for us to properly get to grips and to understand and to be immersed in this world and this story as much or as the best it can be. But it was still good. I still enjoyed it. I think the characters, once again, were kind of harder to connect with because of the shortness of it, but then there were some characters that I did enjoy reading from. Ending, I did feel like it could be leading on, or there is a potential for it to lead on to more, but obviously she did it in the sense of an open ending. You can do what you want with the characters. This is just the end of this book, this story, and that's that. I would kind of love to have another one just so I could have some closure, proper closure, and to kind of see more of this world and maybe get some more explanations on some things, but I can understand why not. Overall, it was good. I did enjoy it. I just felt like it needed to be expanded on more for me to properly engage and love it as much as some people do. And the second book that I was going to read for this series, I unfortunately had to put down because it is a high fantasy, and it's a high fantasy that loads of people love, and I just know that I need to dedicate some proper time and proper brain energy to read it, and with everything that was going on in my life, I just didn't have the time to do that and just couldn't. So I put it down, and I honestly apologise to Andrew, who gifted me this book like profusely, but I will get around to reading it at some point because it is one I do want to read, and that is Descendant by J. Christoph. I've been meaning to read this for goddamn ages, and Andrew gifted it to me at the end of last year, and I eventually tried to pick it up, but as I said, I only got like 50 pages in, maybe not even that, and I just knew I wasn't giving it the time and the brain power that I could have or should have, so I decided to put it down. So I don't really have much to say about this apart from when I was engaged, the very small minute moments I was engaged, like the 5 pages where I had actual brain power and brain energy to engage with it, I did enjoy it, and I felt like I could enjoy it if I had that brain energy throughout the whole book. But for now, I just knew I had to put it down, but I am looking forward to picking it up at some point in the future. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about a girl who goes to assassin school, you know, that sort of female lead kick-ass fantasy sort of stuff, assassins and schools and killing people. It also has footnotes, which was also something that I was like, I need more brain power to concentrate on that, because I found myself just not really reading the big chunks of footnotes because my brain would just disengage because it goes, footnotes, that's educational, you don't need to read that. I will pick this up sometime more in the future, but right now I need something lighter. The next book that I read in the month of July, which I think is definitely my favourite book that I read this month, was Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Eddo-Lodge. I started this in June, so you probably saw it in my June wrap up, and I finally finished it this month. It did take me a while to read because I was listening to it on audiobook, and the only time I really had, especially at the beginning of the month, to listen to audiobooks is just when I'm doing my makeup to film. That was the only time I really listened to audiobooks because I wasn't going out, I wasn't really doing anything to allow me to listen to audiobooks. Obviously now that I have a job and I'm commuting, I do, but I still eventually did finish this book, and I thought it was brilliant. Each chapter deals with different things and different circumstances, and I don't know what else to call them in relation to race. She narrated it because it is narrated by her. The audiobook is narrated by Eddo-Lodge, and I think she did it in such an amazing way because it wasn't just like facts to the point you're like, I'm just like, this is too much, I'm not really engaging. She made it more personal, not personal in the way of it's about her, but personal in the sense that you can understand it better because of the writing style. I think because the writing style and the language is more informal and more relaxed and less like educational facts. It's more conversational, so I think that's what made it more engaging and more easier to understand, so that's why I enjoyed it more. I think it's a really important book, especially if you live in the UK, but even if you're not, it's still such an amazing, important book to read if you really want to. I'm not saying this is the be-all and end-all of understanding race and racism, but it is a great book, a great starting point. She deals with obviously specific UK racism and black history for somebody who never really was taught about UK black history and UK racism. Obviously I know it exists, but I still didn't know too much. The only stuff I know I've learnt from social media and from looking it up myself, and I think this was a really great thing for me to go, oh, I haven't really thought about that, and that's really interesting. I really did enjoy it. And even though I did find myself going like, oh my god, that's so bad, that's like, oh, that's so bad that racism happened, that person, that thing said that's so bad, it also made me go, I need to remember that, I need to think about that, I need to check that, my privileges and stuff like that. It was really good. I did enjoy it. I definitely recommend it on audiobook because, as I said, Rennie Eddo-Lodge narrates it herself. But just in general, please pick it up and just continue to educate yourself about Black Lives Matter. The next and last physical book that I read this month was The Girls by Emma Cline. I just needed a quick, small, easy read just to finish off the month. This book follows our main character Evie, and is set in the late 1960s, like 1969, and she lives in California or somewhere on the west coast, something like that. I think it's California. It is told in 2 timelines. It is kind of being told from an older Evie's perspective, but we're mainly focusing on her when she's about 14. But this follows her as she kind of comes across this group of girls, these very mysterious group of girls, and she becomes almost infatuated by them, and she kind of gets into their kind of little group, into their little, I will go as far as saying, cult, and how that affects her relationships with her parents and her relationships with these girls, and then also affects her when she's older, as we do hear from her when she's older. Obviously I will preface this, and I'm not going to make it the crazy plot twist, but this is basically both fictionalized. It is obviously based off of it, but is not using the same names. It's not using, you know, it's basically, it's about Charles Manson. It's about the Manson family. This family, or these girls that Evie meets, are basically fictionalized people based off of the people who are involved in the Manson family. I think going into this book, I assumed it was going to be more about that. You know, we were going to have the names as, you know, oh, I met Charles, I met Charlie. It does go into the kind of messed up stuff that they did, or that this group did, or a based off version of what, you know, the Manson family did. I assumed it was going to be like true fact hard. It wasn't going to be some inspiration or like influenced sort of thing, if you know what I mean. But I still did enjoy it. I think I gave it a 3.5 or a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I had to pick up an audiobook near the end of the month just so I could get it done, and I think maybe that hindered it a little bit, but I also sometimes just felt like it was just going places and I wasn't really like with it. It was a bit flowy, a bit everywhere, and you know, we introduced more characters which was kind of hard to keep up with. I will preface this and put a trigger warning for underage sex / basically rape, underage sexual assault, very explicit kind of sex discourse and imagery. This is a young girl, 14-year-old girl, exploring her sexuality to the point where she literally explores sex. I did find some parts quite uncomfortable, so I will put a trigger warning out for that. Overall, I did enjoy it. I just think it sometimes just drifted, and it maybe wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be or thought it was going to be. And the final book that I'm going to be talking about is one that I'm currently reading, and just like why I'm no longer talking to white people about race, it's one that I'm listening to on audiobook, and that is Stolen Justice by Lawrence Goldston. This is once again a Black Lives Matter kind of black history, racism, educational book that I've obviously been wanting to pick up to educate myself more, and this one specifically is about how black people have been affected by the voting system and how basically racist the voting system has been ever since America was founded. I picked this one up after I finished listening to Why I'm no longer talking to white people about race, because it was basically the only one available on audiobook at the time. Obviously I want to read the popular ones, the ones that people are talking about. Why not read one that is not very well known and that probably not many people have read, and kind of support, you know, smaller authors. Obviously I'm not that far through it yet, and I am enjoying it. It is very informative. Like, it does go into stuff that I've never even thought about, because A, I'm not from America, but B, it's just, I just haven't, you know, really thought about some of the stuff. A little bit of a downfall for it is that it is more like facts. It's like, it feels more like an educational textbook, which I think I am getting a better experience from it through audiobook, because it's easier, I find, when it comes to facts and all that sort of stuff, and just non-fiction, I find it easier to listen to it on audiobook. But it is still kind of like facts. I'm like, okay, this is like a lot of information and I'm trying to understand it and I'm trying to compute it. It is still very interesting and very eye-opening, if you know what I mean, because as somebody who's only just recently listened to / watched Hamilton, from it being on Disney Plus. I know that what we see in Hamilton is a definitely romanticized version of the story and of the founding fathers and all that sort of stuff. I know that, I've looked into it, but this does go into Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson and all the people around that age and James Madison, how even though, because we see them being played by people of colour, this kind of goes in being like, well, a lot of them were against people of colour having voting rights. So I think that is something that's, of right now, is quite interesting to hear about and listen to about in counteractiveness to me watching Hamilton for the first time. I will continue to listen to that in August and hopefully finish it in August, and I will let you know how I think about it completely in my August wrap up. So that is it for my July wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, it was a bit of a messy month, as you can tell by my DNFs and all that sort of stuff. I'm not gonna, you know, jinx it or anything, but I do hope August will be a more structured and better reading month. If I don't read as many books, I'm not gonna be too mad. I just hope it's not as of a crazy and up and down reading month as July was. So that was said and done. I will leave this here. If you're new around here, please don't forget to subscribe, because why not? I know there are a few of you new people around at the moment, so hello, welcome, thank you. I know it's a bit late for me to say this in the video, but thank you. Like the video, comment the books that you read in the month of July or any of your opinions on the books that I read this month. And with that all said and done, thank you for watching, and I will see you all in my next video.